Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Monday, April 7th edition of the Daily Pulse. We're kicking off a brand new week here at Inside Lowell and in the Well Point Studios, and very excited to welcome, well, if it's Monday, it's a good chance it's a Monday with Marty, former Lowell City Councilor Marty Laurie, joining us here in the Well Point Studios. How are you, Marty?
Good. We're doing great.
Lots going on in
The world is so
beyond.
much. Oh, it's crazy. It really is. And we'll see where it all pans out.
Well, then we'll come back and talk about it after it pans out. But
To me, they're like predictions. I follow it and I watch them. I will say I made a couple of predictions on your telecast and on the radio. Last election, I said it wasn't an election. It was a cultural fight. Now you see it. And I've been saying now for 2 years, it's really not the left and the Democrats after Trump. They're the tools. I said it's been the industrialist, the Bindenbergers, the Trilateral Commission. They make their money on trade and markets. Now you see it.
the globalists, as so we got a lot to talk about, as we like to say here on the Daily Pulse. We keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the city of Lowell and the world around it, and we're gonna bounce around the world around it with Marty Laurie. Just quick thank you to our Inside Lowell Daily Pulse sponsors: Ray Booten, licensed in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, certified appraiser in both states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, Ray Booten is your man. Find them online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint. WellPoint, the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. And a little bit later on today, just minutes after we drop this podcast at noon, I'm going to join our friends at WellPoint. They're coming to Lowell to honor a couple of hometown heroes, a couple of teachers who we've honored with our classroom quarterback feature, but they're going to get a little extra mention and a little extra pat on the back from our friends at WellPoint as hometown heroes. It's part of the WellPoint Hometowns Hero program that's been bouncing around all of our communities here in Greater Lowell and throughout the Commonwealth. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. Of course, always looking forward to talking about what's happening.
We always have fun
with Marty Laurie. Let's start with kind of the big news this morning politically, and it starts statewide. Maura Healey, who has declared that she will seek re-election, though we got to talk about that. I'm not so sure I believe her, but she has her first quote-unquote name challenger. Mike Keneally, former, I believe he was Economic Development Secretary under Charlie Baker. He has announced that he is going to launch his campaign. He is now a candidate for governor in Massachusetts, the first big-name Republican, maybe the only big-name Republican to get in the field. How vulnerable is Maura Healey on two fronts? One, from within the Democratic Party, which we will also talk about, but also from a Republican challenger who's going to, I guess, align himself close to Charlie Baker, who was pretty popular in his term.
She could be very vulnerable. I've been waiting for Senator Durant to make a decision. We had him on the show. He's out of Worcester. And he said if there's a better candidate, he'll step aside and, of course, probably endorse. This is a big endorsement. One of the things that happened to the Republican Party since the last election is they have a new director.
Amy Carnevale.
Carnevale, that's it. And she's trying to bring the party back to people who can win if they're moderates, if they're Charlie Baker. Charlie Baker, I think, would have beat Maura Healey last election.
I don't think she would have run.
I don't think she would have run either. And, you can say, well, he's not right enough. He's not conservative enough. Do you think you would have had half what she has done with the migrants and the hotels and the economy, the tax increases? Do you think that would have happened under Charlie Baker? I don't think so.
Maybe half of it.
Maybe some of the appointments. Well, what's important with this is that they need people to run. The Democrats in the state are very good on down ballots. You get a good Senate candidate, Republican. If the Republicans get a good candidate for governor and they get candidates running for state Senate and the House, there's always that fall down vote. Markey could now face someone. If Markey faces a Republican who's good, you could see some big changes in the state.
So you touched on something with Keneally in the direction of the Republican Party. They went with Jeff Deal.
Right.
They went really kind of to the Trump area. Deaton, who challenged Elizabeth Warren in the last race, I thought he was a little bit more the Baker mold.
Right.
He tried to play it down the middle, but when you said Charlie Baker probably could beat Maura Healey, I think he could have in 2022.
I don't think she would have run.
What I'm not sure is if Charlie Baker could have beaten a Trump-backed Republican in a primary. I think the Republican Party in Massachusetts has a civil war, and I think they have to find a candidate who can bring those two sides together and say to the more Tea Party Trump voters, listen, we need to get that gubernatorial seat, and we'll throw some bones to you on certain policy issues. We'll push back against, whether it's the gun issues or the immigration issues or whatever. But I think the Charlie Baker style, and I won't lump Mike Keneally in there yet until we actually hear from him, but I'm guessing that's where he is. But they're going to have to appease to some degree that, you got to walk the middle to get the independent vote, but you also have to first survive your primary and energize what little Republican base there is in Massachusetts.
Yeah, first of all, you've got to make it to the primary. You got to go through the convention. Now, I don't know what the Republicans are. The Democrats are 15%. Now, everyone around the state are wondering, is Diane DeZoglio going to run for governor? Whether she does, I don't know.
Well, she's going to be sitting in that chair on Thursday morning, and I'm going to ask her. That's the very first question I'm going to ask her.
I'm a huge fan of Diane DeZoglio. Her problem would be getting through the convention, getting 15%. Mm-hmm. If you remember, years ago, John Sibler ran from BU.
John Silver, yeah.
And he couldn't get the 15. It was only through Billy Bulger that he got 15%. And then he won the primary. So if someone like Diane or someone on the other side can make it to the primary, then you get the independent voters. Now, there's more Republican voters in this state and independents than ever. So it would be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I believe Keneally is a legitimate challenger. I'm curious if he can bring the warring, the Jim Lyons versus I'll call it the Mary Burns faction of the Republican Party.
We'll go nationally. Bernie Sanders in 2016 had the lead. The superdelegates in the party stopped him. 2020, Bernie Sanders had a big lead. The superdelegates stopped him. The progressives did not want Biden. They held their nose and voted. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think the Republicans have to do. They have to say, listen, hold your nose and vote, or you're going to get Maura Healey back for 4 more years. What do you want?
So are we going to get Maura Healey back? I know she declared. There was a lot of chatter out there. And by the way, Diana DeZoglio is the first name people say. And she told me when I booked her for this Thursday, she said, everybody is asking. I have no, I have no intention. And then I kept nudging and we'll see. But by the way, she will be at a Chamber of Commerce event.
I'll work on that
Chamber
campaign.
Of Commerce. Will you? Good.
Yeah, I'd work on her campaign.
I would if I thought it would help her. I'll stay away. So not her, but she will be in Lowell at an event with the Greater Lowell Chamber of Commerce on Thursday morning. Coffee with the Auditor, I believe it's called. Go to the Greater Lowell Chamber of Commerce website to get details there. But all of this is predicated on, Maura Healey running, and she said she's going to. Why don't I believe her, Marty?
She announced the same as Senator Markey did. They announced now so they don't get an opponent. Senator Markey didn't announced early last time, and he ended up with one of the Kennedys running against him. And I won a steak dinner on that one. I picked him but I think they're announcing early to keep candidates away. The party in this state is so far left. They got damaged over the weekend when you looked at the salaries of the state Senate. How much money they're pulling in, and some of them are Republican. But that doesn't hurt incumbents. When you look at that type of money being spent, they're making, $400,000 every 2 years? It's incredible the amount of money these people in Boston are pulling in.
They got they've got 1 million committees, which each come with a bump in pay and whatnot.
Mileage? Oh, you the whole 9 yards. That's why I always respected Tommy Golden, Dave Nagel, Kevin Murphy. Every year there was a new speaker. They were all under indictment, and they never picked the right one. But they never, they stayed, to me, they stayed with their city. They stayed with the people they represented instead of trying to pick out someone who would carry them forward.
So if you had to wager, because you like to bet steak dinners every now and then.
Yeah.
You also like to do prediction shows in January.
I do. I've been doing pretty good.
So will Maura Healey run? When all is said and done, will Maura Healey's name be on that ballot?
Yeah, because I think the progressives love her. They love her.
You think she's
going to go to the convention, and the progressives, the young people, they're telling her run, run, run. To me, I'd rather see Kim Driscoll run. Kim Driscoll is the real deal. She was, I think, the town manager in Chelsea, turned that around, the mayor in Salem. Kim Driscoll is the real deal. Very much like Diane DeZoglio. Diane's the real deal. But whether she would never challenge Maura Healey. But the progressives are going to continue to tell Maura Healey, run. So she will.
Michelle, would Michelle Wu be a potential candidate if Maura Healey doesn't run? She certainly has shored up her leftist bona fides.
Yeah, she has to win this election. This is not a good time for her to run. And we don't know what type of vote her opponent's going to get. I think she's
Joshua Kraft.
Yeah.
Robert Kraft.
And I think she may be vulnerable when you see what's going on down in Boston. But that's why Maura Healey has announced. That's why Senator Markey has announced. They don't want a Wu running against them. Yeah. I thought maybe the congresswoman from Cambridge, Presley, might try to move up. But
yeah, I'm not so sure Senator Markey goes unchallenged this time. I tell you what, whenever I talk to the auditor, Diana DeZoglio, I tell her that's the seat to go for. Don't mess around with governor. You go to Washington, D.C., and because as somebody who I respect very much said, it's the most exclusive club on the planet. There's only 100 members. There's only been 100 members for 78 years.
It is the most exclusive club.
And there will probably only be, unless Greenland gets annexed or Canada, you'll only have 100
Maura
members.
Healey has a lot to lose because I think she was looking nationally.
Yes,
now, when you look at what's going on in the country, the protest, the Democratic Party, when you have, what's her name, AOC as the leader of the Democratic Party now, or perceived, Maura Healey might do well nationally. If you notice, most of your top Democrats, even Schumer, have backed away. And I think the strategy is let all this go by. The general public doesn't agree with many of these people like AOC, and they'll step in 2 years. And just much like the Republicans, I've said from day one, Donald Trump's going to have an issue. It's his second term. People are going to start running for president or wanting to run, and they're going to start questioning Donald Trump. You're starting to see it now. Who was it? Chris Christie was on over the weekend knocking some of his policies. Yeah, not that I'm a big
Christie's been knocking Trump for 8 years.
But when he got knocked out of the presidential race, he was the first one on his side.
Well, in 2016, in 2024,
But I think there's a couple of Republicans who are looking, obviously the vice president, and it's hard for him because for him to run, he has to run against some of Trump's policies. Lindsey Graham doesn't have to. I don't know if Lindsey Graham's running, but you take a major Republican, they don't have to break too far. Like Ted Cruz, I always say he looks like a grown-up Eddie Munster. If you look at Abe Munster in the Munster, Ted Cruz looks like Eddie at 60. So to me, he'd have a hard time. But it's going to be an interesting 4 years.
It most certainly will be. We'll focus on that. We've got Marty Laurie here on the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, Monday with Marty. Monday, April 7th, 2025. We'll continue our discussion. We'll go nationally before we pull it back to within the city of Lowell limits. But I want to just thank our Daily Pulse sponsors, Ray Booton, licensed realtor, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, certified appraiser in both states as well. You can find them online, realestaterayBooton.com. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Washington Savings Bank, banking that feels like home. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to Greater Lowell and Southern New Hampshire since 1925. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in Greater Lowell through strategic, impactful philanthropy. Francis E. Prevention Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on to protect its most valuable assets since 1982. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, who bring all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to downtown Lowell and the Songa Center. This Saturday night, the Pirates play against an expansion team, the something freight or whatever. I forget what they're called. But we're going to give away some tickets on InsideLowell.com. Follow us either on the website or social media. Chance to go see the Pirates. They've signed some new players. I think they signed a new quarterback, which should be fun. Keep following the Pirates. They'll turn around their season. Also, might as well give a quick shout out, by the way, to my friends at, let's go over here, UMass Lowell. Also part of the Inside Lowell family. I've got my water nice and cold in this mug, my Riverhawks mug. Very excited for that. Equally excited to have Marty Laurie here. So a weekend of protest across the country. Folks gathered out there to show their opposition to Donald Trump and his policies. And they had all these witty signs and name calling. And heck, there was even a rally here in Lowell that got a little bit controversial. You're a former Democrat, right? You're now enrolled. You left the party. It left you, you said. So you left them. But you're a little closer to them than I am. I get the sense they need a new playbook. We've seen this before. We saw it in 2015 and 2016 and then 2017 with the pink knit caps. And we see it all the time.
That's what they do. They protest.
It's old. How about some ideas?
Some
ideas that line up with the vast majority of Americans on certain issues, the 80-20 issues, as Scott Jennings calls them on CNN, right? The 50-50 ones, those are easy, right? How about just getting on the 80-20 ones? Get aboard with common sense, and then maybe people start to take you seriously.
I think when I was looking at the protests nationwide, you're seeing a real break in labor, and this happens. I think some of the federal unions were probably involved. They have their people there. They're afraid of cuts, and they are. And I think I saw from some of the pictures and just reading signs, you see a lot of people who get money, colleges, artists, the arts. This is
NGOs, non-government organizations.
This is what I saw looking at the signs. I like to read through it, and people who are used to getting endowments or funds. That's what I saw. And it didn't surprise me over the weekend that the United Auto Workers, I'm trying to think of his name, Filch, he came out and backed the policy. The Teamsters came out and backed the policy.
Talking about the president's tariff.
O'Brien, right. What caught me with the United Auto Workers, that president of that union spoke at the Democratic Convention and backed Kamala Harris. And now they're out. Now, we talked about this on the radio Saturday briefly. I had to leave at 7. I went back to the 1980s when foreign companies were building their shops here. One, I think, was Toyota. I think it's in Tennessee or Kentucky. They have a huge plant. And when they start to build these plants, they're building modern plants, robotics. Now A1. They didn't have A1 in the 80s. And the president of United Auto Workers, when that was presented to him, said, okay, we can be trained for those jobs too. And Mark, the Draker Whisperer, called up Saturday. Mark, did you hear him?
I know, I did not.
He called. He lives in South Carolina. Yep. And I think it's Volkswagen has a plant there. 17,000 employees. 17,000. And he said, if you make $20 an hour in South Carolina, you're doing well. That's a lot of people. So do these companies now bring their shops into the United States? 17,000 people for Volkswagen. Toyota has a big shop. I think Mark said it was Kentucky. I remember them building it. But this is what they're trying to do. And they asked the president of the United Auto Workers about the stock market. Now, who was it? One of the major firms came out knocking the tariffs. And he said, where was he last year when there was price gouging? Where were all these people? He said, we're losing our...
Making a lot of money.
Yeah, he said 50% of the people in this country don't own stocks. And we don't have our retirements anymore. And this is, to me, this is the unions I remember. And I was fascinated by the two presidents coming forward. Do I hope they build shops here? Yeah, and they are going to be modernized, robotics, A1. But the United Auto Workers, we can be trained for those jobs.
So United Auto Workers, working people, the revenue of that industry comes from private people purchasing things, right? The Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, story this morning in the Herald, I believe.
Yeah.
He's launching a podcast trying to tackle some of these issues. He had this to say about the Trump tariffs. If the Trump tariffs bring back, quote, good paying middle class jobs, end quote, it's worth all the pain because it will benefit future generations. He added that he's fed up with Democrats who have, quote, lost the working class and just, quote, sit on the sidelines and throw rocks. Teamsters, 1.3 million members, right? That's the largest union in the country?
Probably.
Okay. Teamsters, United Auto Workers, working people, private industry workers, right?
That's what I'm saying.
And you're talking about college professors, teachers. You're talking about associations, right? Government people
unions.
whose entire industry relies on government funding.
And that's what they're afraid of. And I would be out there too if I was still with the letter carrier. The letter carriers went out about 2 weeks ago on their own. They had across the country. And a lot of it had to do with Trump saying he wants to privatize the Postal Service, I think. But as I've read the article, they're also up for negotiations. They had a contract and they rejected it. So now they're probably in binding arbitration. So there's that sideline to it too.
So interesting point that I saw on Twitter, X, regarding the tariffs. And I did a whole show on a Thursday. I don't want to replay that. I think, as Sean O'Brien said, a little short-term pain. And I'm actually now convinced it's going to be weeks of pain, not months, as I originally thought.
Let me ask you a question. I'm not an economist, and I don't try to be. Donald Trump comes out and says this week, okay, we're getting calls from other countries on the tariffs.
Taiwan supposedly said they'll eliminate all theirs, which were at 90-something%.
Okay, so now we're gonna sit down and we're gonna talk to other countries. What happens to the stock market?
Skyrocket quickly. I'm telling people buy, go buy now if you can.
I'm looking. I don't own any stock. I'm looking now.
That's why Bill Gates sold a few months. Bill Gates knew what was coming. He's I'm sure he's going to be buying when he.
This is the same group protest.
What is Nancy Pelosi? What's her stock portfolio looking like? That's what I would follow.
They're questioning.
I'd want to see what she's buying and selling.
That's what the question in Congress the past couple of years is. The portfolios of some of these senators and Congress people, because they vote. So are they voting? Now, we saw it in the debate with Kennedy. Bernie Sanders questioned him about the pharmaceuticals, and Kennedy said, "You're getting money from pharma." "Oh no, I'm getting it from individuals." Well, what individuals?
Workers.
Yeah, come on.
Nonprofit government workers who are getting all these community outreach coordinators who are taking to the streets.
So I understand the protest, and I understand where they're coming from. They're fighting for their careers, and that's what they're doing. But one thing I've said right along, and I'm watching this closely because I said this is a cultural fight, is Donald Trump going in to these agencies and tearing out the cultural aspect that's been built up over the years.
100%.
That's what I've been watching. I've been talking about this for a couple of years on the radio. He's doing it. He's going in, and the cultural aspect of these, and it starts back in the 30s with the FDR, where government grew, the churches, and they used to do these things. Now it's the government. Is he going in and taking these programs out, and then they'll come back?
In some form, but there'll be different people who will be administering them instead of the profit sector, which hires all these, community engagement officers and all this, and they're going to have to make a choice. Do we want to provide the money that we get to the people directly, or do we want to provide it to people to get out, vote, become activists?
Right.
But I have a question regarding this tariff thing, because I hadn't really made this connection when I did my show on Thursday. But every Democrat, every opponent of tariffs, every globalist is telling you that they're going to increase the cost to consumers, sky high inflation. A tariff is a tax, correct?
Right.
All right. So to my leftist Democratic friends, all you Elizabeth Warren supporters, you Bernie Sanders supporters, what have they been calling for the last, I don't know, increase in the corporate tax rate, right? What's the difference between a tariff, which is a tax on corporations that ship their jobs overseas and then import their products to America? What's the difference between that tax and the increase in the corporate tax rate?
Listen, these tariffs...
If one's going to increase costs to the American people and the American consumer, so will the other one, right?
I'm looking at it from a historical point of view. Lowell had the mills. Where did the mills go? Down south. In the 80s, what happened to the UAW? Those jobs went south. We've been NAFTA. All these people were supporting NAFTA. All these jobs going to Mexico and China and Canada. Now they're fighting the tariffs. This has been going. Look at Lowell. Lowell just offered companies a TIF to come in. Now, where are they coming from? And we've seen companies leave Lowell because they're getting TIFs from other cities and towns or states. I don't see the difference between a TIF and in a tariff. Companies leave all the time to go somewhere where they're going to get a tax break. Now we're seeing it with tariffs. And I think if Donald Trump comes out and says, listen, we've talked to 3 or 4 countries, we're already starting to negotiate new tariffs, you'll see this. And I'm not an economist. I think you'll see the market go up.
Yeah, because ultimately these countries will have to come back. If Trump can stick to it, and I actually believe he will. He's got a long way to go. And even everyone talks about, the midterms. Midterms are 20
He's
months
not running
out.
again.
Right. But there'll be 20 other crises that the Democrats will be railing against.
Michigan just picked up votes with the UAW. They're supporting them. Correct. And now you're seeing the Teamsters, 1.5 million plus spouses plus kids. You're talking 4 million votes.
Correct.
And so what I find it interesting, but I think if he comes across and starts negotiating, and they see that, the stock market's up and down all the time on these things. But
to my leftist friends, the Bernie Bros, the Elizabeth Warren supporters out there, support tariffs instead of an increase in the corporate taxes. Because you increase the corporate taxes, you increase everybody's costs. If you increase the tariffs, you may protect some American jobs in the process. So that might be a smarter tack. But again, what do I know?
Massachusetts, we need more housing. Now, I've been whispering in people's ears, and I've talked about it on the radio, of dropping the income tax if you sell a home and you don't buy another one. I can't think of the name right off the top of my head. My memory's going.
The inheritance tax? No.
The sales tax. You sell a house.
Oh, on the house, yeah.
Drop that. Drop it for a year and see how much property goes on the market. You might have a lot of property where the prices will go down. And I had to pay a big one when I sold my house up in New Hampshire. I can't think of the name of it, but when you sell property and you don't reinvest, you have to pay a tax. Now, I sold a piece of property in New Hampshire. They didn't tax me. They don't have that tax. Massachusetts taxed me. Yeah.
Massachusetts needs it.
That's why Marty Healy's going to have an opponent.
Before we leave the protests and the tariffs, there was a little controversy that broke out on social media. A lot of well-known Lowellians chiming in and out. It was part of a discussion this morning on WCAP where a well-known Lowellian, Paul Belay, took exception to the protesters in Lowell, quote unquote, desecrating the Whitlatney monument there. The monument to the Civil War, the first 2 casualties of the Civil War were Lowell soldiers from, right? If I'm remembering my
They weren't originally from Lowell. They lived in Lowell, but they weren't originally. And there's also a third person buried there, Smith, and they don't. I think he might have come from Lawrence. It's a whole history on it.
So the protesters were standing on that island, trying to get as much visibility as they could on Merrimack, Dutton Street,
Right.
etc. I get it, but they also were hanging signs, I'm told, on the area and whatnot, and that's where the controversy started. And I guess one of the ladies, I'm not going to mention her name because I know her, and they're circulating her name out there. It's not that difficult to find, but she basically replied to Paul Belay, like, who cares about the people who've long been dead? We're fighting. I'm paraphrasing it. We're fighting, for this, that, and that today, and now, like, there's all sorts of pushback, blowback against her.
I saw that on Facebook, and some say there were a sign on it, of saying there weren't. It's my opinion, and I always thought you couldn't stand on the grass. That's a grave. So forget the monument. The grassy area itself, to my knowledge, was always supposed to be off limits.
And that's what they could mean when they're saying that you're desecrating the monument, etc. So my take on this, look, I think it was a dumb thing to say. Like I said, I know the lady well. We disagree. I don't agree with everything that she says or believes. I'm sure she doesn't agree with everything that I say or believe. But I also know, as a member of the Lowell artist community, I've seen her out there the couple of days before Folk Festival painting the Jersey barriers. So as we're welcoming people to the city, we don't just have Jersey barriers needed for protection. You have some artwork on them and stuff. Her heart's in the right place. I'll question where your mind is, but that's okay. We can agree to disagree. I've had great conversations with her. I know her.
Oh, absolutely.
Downtown resident.
Nice lady.
What I don't want to see is this nonstop national narrative of dividing people. It's now starting to divide people in our communities. People who should actually be working together for the betterment of Lowell. I mean, I'm seeing people making posts about, I quit this cultural council that holds an African cultural festival every year because I need to dedicate all my energy to fighting with Trump and what's going on in DC. And I'm like, what are you people doing? It's like, your life was the same from 2017 to 2021. It was probably the same from 2021 to 2025. It'll be the same the next 4 years. And it's like, if we just come together and just concentrate on making our communities a better place, our state a better place, and our country a better place, we can disagree on how to get there. But if we work together on the things that we're together on, we're in a better place. Don't fall victim. Don't fall victim, people, to all this fear-mongering and this hate, because they're trying to divide you for a reason. I hope you wake up someday and realize they're trying to divide you so that you don't realize they're all getting filthy rich in DC off of your money. Was a mistake made? Yeah. Would it have been better if they didn't stand on that statue and stood on the City Hall Plaza and whatnot? Yeah.
Right.
Did the woman say something that was probably kind of insensitive? Yeah. I think she said it in the heat of passion in the moment because all this anger has been ginned up to convince people that we've got fascists in our government and they're running the country. And it's like,
it doesn't do the protest any help either, because now their message is being distorted. It's not, they went out to protest on a particular message. And I took part of these in years. And when things like this happen, your message is now in the wind.
Bingo.
It's out there. A lot of the people that come to protest don't all live in Lowell, and they don't know that's a grave.
Right.
And, it'd be good if the people there told them, hey, don't stand up here. That doesn't always happen. But yes, now the message of the protest, and I believe in protest, is now being distorted a little bit. What they were protesting about, as I said, I look at the crowd and I look at the signs, and what I see is funds for money. That's I saw.
It's always about the money, Marty. You know that.
They're not taking Social Security and Medicare. I haven't heard them talk about cutting.
Well, if you're getting it illegally, and by the way, illegal immigrants are not entitled to get this money, whether a state hands them an ID card, a social security, you are not entitled to that money. That is
if you remember, a few years back, the state of Massachusetts was giving out driver's licenses.
Of course.
To allow them to collect. There was a case this week.
I thought it was so that they could go to their jobs. Isn't that what they told us?
They get benefits.
You don't believe that one?
Maybe they do. I can only tell you what I read in the paper and the take that I'm reading. An immigrant was arrested this week or last week at a courthouse. I guess the session started. I'm not sure how it all goes out, but ICE has picked him up, driven, and the DA and the judge are mad. Well, he did time in prison on several different things. Time to go home. And,
there's those 80-20 issues again that the Democrats want to die on that 20 hill over. Can you find cases of people who are just going about their daily lives, working, and
I wish the DA tried to stop it, because I made a prediction. Someone's going to jail. He'd be the winner. Someone's going. I mean, when you look at Mayor Wu, always said, we're not a sanctuary state. We're not a sanctuary state. Everyone's backing off as quick as they can because they know they may go to jail. But, I saw it on Facebook. I saw the debate. And to me, as someone and we've all protested and different things, the message of the protest is now in the wind. And
in Lowell, at least, for a couple of days. But it also, and it ultimately ends up hurting people in the community. Anybody who was part of that, now people are going to look at the photos and see who was on there. And they're good people. I know them. I don't agree with them, but they do care, which is not a bad thing. I think they're being ginned up by a corrupt group of globalists who don't want to see their golden goose.
I was surprised. Joe, we did the show. Let's go back to the tariffs and what the protest is about. Joe was saying that ibuprofen is now made in China. I don't know. But over the weekend,
95%
is made
of the ibuprofen sold in the United States of America is made in China. That fact was given to me by George Bachrachis, well-known businessman who was in the pharmaceutical industry. That is suicidal if you're an American.
Well, let's look at this. And what I talked about, you're fighting over tariffs. Many of these companies are multinational corporations, okay? Multinational. So they've been here, they were in America, now they're somewhere else. I saw over the weekend Bayer, they get sued on Roundup. Now, Bayer, aspirin, Bayer, they're out of Germany. Where's Budweiser out of now? A lot of these beer companies, a lot of companies were bought up by European companies.
Yeah, because it's cheaper to take your corporate headquarters in. And that's, I think, what kind of Trump is saying is like, if you stop making your products and having your headquarters here in America, you should pay more. I think even Democrats, I think, would agree with that.
Yeah,
if they just stop and listen long enough, then just stop with the TDS, because if Trump says it, it must be bad.
Many of the people who were protesting this weekend are the ones who really educated me on multinational corporations. They were American. We see them as American corporations, but they're really owned by overseas companies now. So, they may manufacture here, I don't know. But I found that with Bayer, which I always thought was a U.S. company, and now I guess they're German. So, before you get into tariffs, think about multinational corporations, and it's really complicated.
Think about the future of your country. Lastly, let's end today's discussion. Let's bring it back to Lowell a little bit. Local elections coming up. I don't think we've had any new candidates get into the races. They have, they'll pick up their paperwork in June, and then have till a certain point to turn it in and be on the ballot. But what we are starting to see is the campaign fundraisers.
Oh, yeah.
You've held fundraisers. You know how much you need to mount an effective campaign citywide, a district. You need a little bit less. But do fundraisers tell us anything about who's going to win and who's going to lose?
You're going to see a lot of people donate to the same candidates. Now, when I ran, there were 18 candidates, you ran for one of 9 seats. Now it's becoming a little bit more touchy. That and we were talking earlier about preliminaries. The first time I ran, I won. I did not want a preliminary because we don't raise a lot of money. We would watch every dime, yard sign. So $5,000 or $6,000, $7,000. You don't want a primary because you have to spend. That primary in Belvedere is going to cost a lot of money now. And I've seen signs up already for 2 candidates. They're going to have to raise money for signs, ads, lit.
Well, that's where the money
right.
That's where the money comes in.
At one time, you had the Lowell Sun, you had the radio station, you had all these outside sources you could buy ads from. They're dwindling. I think the last one.
Buy ads on InsideLowell?
InsideLowell. Well, when we did the debates, the idea a couple of years ago, we had 50 minutes to do the debate. Well, the ads started pouring in. So, to do the questions, and I came under a lot of heat from some people for holding the questions to myself. But I had to design questions to fit the time slot. And, but I think there's 2 candidates in the acre, Paul Rathiem. I still expect a third to come out. So you might see a primary there.
Yeah. Does turnout at these fundraisers, because we've got I know Danielle McFadden from the Chamber of Commerce had hers last week. I'm told there were about 200 some odd people there, raised $15,000.
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, right. That's a good haul. I'm told that Eric Gitcher had his, I believe, the prior week. I've heard he had a very good turnout from a couple of folks. Others told me they thought he could have more, but I looked at some photos. It looked like a good turnout. Francisco Maldonado, who's challenging Johnny Dakota.
Yeah.
He had a fundraiser. I haven't spoken to him yet to see how it goes. But does the money, especially for the first-time candidates, does the money generated and the show of support that they get, does that indicate, does that, like, when some of these other first-time candidates come in, if they don't match that, does that tell you something?
No, I mean, you always want a good crowd. But say you have 200 people. How many are going to hold signs for you? How many are going to go put up door knockers for you? They're there to show support. If you're running citywide, it's great because you need...
Well, if you've got 200 that show up, that's a bigger pool of which to get people to go knocking doors with you than if you have 50 or whatever number that is, right?
But
now you're dealing with a bigger pool.
You see some very successful candidates. You go in and there's 50 people, maybe 100 throughout but those 50, 100 are going to put signs in their yard. They're going to hold signs at the intersections. They're going to knock doors for you. That's what it's going to come down to with the nitty gritty, how big the campaign is. Fundraising is important. I've always said it, now's the time when you see the protest. I want to bring this up today. Go to Open Secrets. I talk about Open Time. That's the federal fundraising. It's a private organization that tracks money. So when you see these signs people are holding up, just kind of go on and search and see where that money's going. We did a show. Brady McCarron came in. I did it on Johnny McDonough's show. You should do it here. Have someone come in and look at OCPF, who's donating to who. You don't have to take local candidates, but governors, senators, and see where that money's coming from. But what you really want to do is educate the public, the viewer, on how to do it themselves. It's not about searching out someone's campaigns fund. It's educating the person. I didn't know about Open Secrets till a couple of years ago, and it's amazing what I've learned by going into that.
Lastly, turnout at fundraisers, and there's a bunch of candidates who have them coming up. And we'll be talking to a bunch of them. Sixto DeJesus will be joining us later this week, I believe, or next week. Sorry, I can't remember my calendar either, but Aaron General will be here. I'm trying to get as many candidates in before we get to campaign.
We're doing it on Saturday. We've reached out to a couple of candidates. We only book 6, actually 2 shows a month, so that's 2 hours. 4 hours for the month. So we've had some conflicts with scheduling. We had Belinda Duran.
Yep.
I've had more people tell me they were very, very impressed with Belinda.
She's a very well-spoken candidate.
Yeah, she is very smart. And so between Inside Lowell, what we try to do on the radio, Jerry and Warren, you're going to get to meet these people, and then you'll see them start knocking to us.
So, turnout, everybody talked about the very low turnout in Lowell in 2023 in the municipal election.
We have neighborhood representation. It was going to explode.
So I think it'll be much higher in 2025. How much higher than the 7,500? I used that figure. It was 75. I think 75.97, but don't shoot me.
Belvedere will be high.
Belvedere will be high because Belvedere is going to have a preliminary unless something drastically changes. But you've got 4 very well-known declared candidates and a 5th who's talking about it, but hasn't done the necessary steps yet
The
to do it.
Highlands has been pretty active. I expect a big turnout there.
Yep, you're going to have a competitive race in the Highlands.
Johnny,
Yep.
our business out of the Highlands. So you'll always see a good turnout because they have the candidates.
We don't know yet if we're going to have an at-large preliminary on the city council side, which means everybody in the city will then have an opportunity to go vote. We may have one on the school committee side.
You have 4 candidates now.
4 declared candidates now.
What do you need for?
You need 7.
Yeah,
I don't think you're going to get to 7. Not with the 3 incumbents who were so strong. Each has topped the ticket at one point or another. Eric Gitcher, Rita Mercer.
That's why I said the Sexto.
Sexto's a legit candidate. But so now, if you're an upstart, now you're really, because even the one challenger who's declared is well known. So he's gonna get some legitimate support out there.
It's going to be hard because I predicted Kim Scott won't have a opponent, and I still believe that.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
I don't see it. She's done a fantastic job. She works hard, and so what's the turnout in that district? Corey, I don't think it doesn't look like Corey.
Corey Robinson does not look at this point, but he will
Danny's,
not have one.
I don't think he's going to have a candidate.
I think the guy who tried to get the signatures last time is looking at it again. Emil Kaufman.
Danny's been, in my mind, one of the best mayors we've ever had. Danny Rourke has done a fabulous job. So he's going to be tough. But the Highlands and Belvedere are going to be 2 areas, and they're both big vote getters to come out. So, and Paul Rathiem, I don't know what. I still think a 3rd comes out there.
He's got Jose Cervantes, who's filed his paperwork with OCPF. Sidney Lang has told me in Inside Lowell that he's thinking about it, but he has not made a decision.
And he's a big candidate.
He's going to be a legit challenger.
We've argued about that, Jerry Nether, and I and a few others. Paul Rathiem can't lose, and he beat Dave
Roulette,
but
Froon Kembang.
Dave Roulette lost that election when they did the split for the voting. When he lost that area down around Moody Street, and they took that out of his district, Dave Roulette lost the election then. And so the way they broke it up, that had a lot to do with the outcomes.
School committee, only 4. They take the 8 districts and they double up. So you've got only 4. To this point, it is April 7th. I have not heard the name of a single challenger whispered for the 4 districts. Again, Freddie Bahu, Dave Conway, Dominic Lay, and Eileen Del Rossi. However, the at-large race, you have the 2 incumbents, Connie Martin and Jackie Doherty. Connie Martin has told me she is seeking re-election. Jackie Doherty has not responded yet. There's a lot of speculation out there that she isn't, a lot of speculation that she is. But we mentioned Danielle McFadden is declared. She is running. Bob Hoey, although he hasn't spoken with us yet, he is saying on City Life and other media outlets, he's running at large. So now you potentially have 4, and there's another gentleman, Elkin Montoya, who is weighing a decision on whether to run or not.
I haven't talked to Elkin in a while. He's been looking.
You could have a preliminary in the at-large race for school committee without a single challenger.
Yeah.
If one of these at-large people was, I don't know, that might be worth it to take a look at the district race.
Yeah.
Clearer path.
I thought Corey could have done that last time, but you run against Leahy. I think Corey Belanger might do better running citywide. I mean, that's just my own opinion. Corey did very well last time. He did very, very well citywide. Belvedere, there's just so many people. And we've been talking about on the radio, and off air here, Corey will probably split votes with Finn, and Duran and Jen will probably split votes. That's going to be interesting.
It's a fascinating race for me because there's a couple of factors to weigh in that, and the power of incumbency is, you don't want to underestimate that.
No, you don't.
And while he took that council seat in a controversial fashion versus with an appointment, Corey Belanger has now had a year. By the time the September preliminary comes around, he'll have had 13 plus months to start doing things for the neighborhood.
He's won in the past.
I'm hearing that people who may not necessarily have aligned themselves with Corey Belanger in the past are working with him now, and if not publicly, maybe behind the scenes. That's going to be a fascinating race. I
called Corey, and I see him at the health club. He was coming under heat, putting his name in and getting the seat that way. And I called him too, and I said, Corey, don't be crazy, take the seat, because the people who are outspoken against you, if they get the seat or their friend gets the seat, they're taking it. Let's be honest here. They're going to take that seat. So if you get the votes, take it. I had my grandson out at the park last week. We were having a great time. Who was out knocking doors? Corey. And I tell people, you've got to start knocking in April or even March, April, because now it doesn't get dark till 7:30, and you wait till Labor Day, it's dark at 5, you can't knock, and then if the Patriots or the Red Sox have a good season going, you can't knock on Sunday.
Well, here's the other thing. So the preliminaries, now they have the date, September 9th.
Yeah, right.
Which is basically just after Labor Day. You start early voting. We're going to have early voting, and you're going to have mail-in voting as well in the municipal election.
Right.
So that means in August, people are voting. Well, they start vacations for all intents and purposes from June 20 through, August 25, 6, 7, whenever school comes back in. If you're not knocking doors now, you're scrambling, right? You've got to be out there, and I don't know. I know the other candidates you've mentioned. You're starting to see signs. You've seen some Belinda Duran signs. I know Aaron Gendron is starting to get out there. They showed up to the Sustainability Council event on Saturday, along with a bunch of incumbents and challengers as well. So you've got to get out there. Otherwise, the elections have completed. Those people who figure, you say the election doesn't start till after Labor Day.
When we did the debates that first year, we had the voting early. And one of the things we talked about was people were going to be voting, a week in advance? Yeah. So those ballots are going to be in.
Correct.
So you have to do it. It's going to be interesting this year because with Trump, you have to show an ID to vote. So what happens to mail-in ballots?
Well,
okay. I mean, that's something I'm looking at now. So Trump says you have to have an ID to vote. And states are fighting
in 26 and 28. Not only is he saying you have to have an ID to vote, now some of these states will fight it, but he's also saying that federal law calls for an election day. You set an election day.
Right, it does.
Not an election week, not an election month. Election day. So, eventually, I think the Supreme Court is going to have to rule on this. But imagine if this early voting, now municipalities can get away with it, right? Because a state can set its, and the city of Lowell can set its election rules. But the moment a congressional or U.S. Senate candidate ends up on that ballot, or a presidential candidate ends up on that ballot, the argument that Donald Trump is trying to make, and we'll see if he's successful or not, is one day.
We'll both have great
Tuesday, the first Tuesday of November, if it's that follows the first Monday.
I don't think you have to show a license this year, but that's coming, and that's going to change early voting.
Right. You saw Wisconsin, even though they elected the more liberal judge to that state Supreme Court seat, they also overwhelmingly passed voter ID.
Right.
It's, again, that's one of those 80-20 issues that 80% of the people say it's not dumb to ask for a voter ID.
Well, our Supreme Court, the writers not too happy with, what's her name?
Roberts, Coney Barrett.
Coney Barrett. They're not happy with her. You know, and when you look at the past 40, 50 years, 60, the Republicans have had most of the picks to the Supreme Court. They've had that. And you look at how a lot of their picks, and the guy from New Hampshire, the primary one that they point to. Beyer. Not Beyer. Beyer was from Mass.
Oh, Souter.
He became very liberal. And the Warren court, Warren was a conservative. Eisenhower put him in. He became a. So you can never really guess.
Even now with the Supreme Court, other than Clarence Thomas and Alito, you never really know what the 6 conservative justices
one
are
of my
do.
favorite is,
you know for sure what the 3 Democrat appointed justices are going to do.
Not so much Kanan. I'm amazed at her. I'm fascinated. I think she's a great justice.
What major issue has she?
I wouldn't say major, but there's been a couple that she's come to cited. When you look at the Supreme Court, most of those issues are 8-1, 7-2. The strength in the Supreme Court is who writes the decision. And when you look at the history of the court, if you have something you don't want overturned, you put a very strong writer on that. If you have one that's, this could be overturned, so you might take a Coney and have her write it because it will leave an opening. But look at who's appointed to write the decisions. Roberts has done a few himself, and that means he doesn't want these to come back. It's interesting. The court's interesting, but Coney Barrett, watch her for the next couple of years.
Well, you're a very fervent watcher of the U.S. Supreme Court.
That's coming up.
They're going to be very, very busy between now and the end of their term, and end of June, right, is when their term expires.
On this show, in my own, I said I think Trump may have 2, maybe 3 more appointments to the court. They're still trying to shake Sotomayor out of there, and. But don't be surprised if he gets 2 or 3.
He's already appointed 3 of them.
Yeah, wait till he gets 5 or 6.
That's why I say the tariffs issue. Sure, it's big news now.
It is.
By the time the midterms come around, you will have Supreme Court picks. You will have Supreme Court rulings on elections and whatnot. Voter
2 biggest unions in the country are with them. If you looked at those protests over the weekend, show me the union signs, especially not government.
Teachers unions.
No,
teachers and government
I
unions.
did the same thing. I was with the post office, okay? That's what you do. You fight for jobs. The pie is so big, you keep your slice. I would have been out there if it was the post office. And I enjoy protest, peaceful protest. I think it's great.
But don't walk on any monuments.
You got to be careful today. The thing is, and I've been involved in a few, you're going to get a couple of hundred people to a protest. Well, you don't know who's coming, and you don't know what's going to spark that off. And you got to be very careful. And you're always alert of what's going on. But we'll see if Trump comes out this week and says, oh, we're going to negotiate with just a few countries, you'll see the stock market. My guess. Come right back up.
It always does. Marty.
Don't look at your 401 until
don't look at your 401k for a little bit. Marty Laurie, Mondays.
Always good, Teddy.
Always great to have you here. Thank you to Marty Laurie. Thank you for joining us as well. We'll be back tomorrow on the Daily Pulse. Who's my guest tomorrow? God, I'm drawing up. Oh, Melanie Gilbert from the Lowell Sun will be joining us here in the WellPoint Studios. State Auditor Diana DeZoglio will be here later this week. Leslie Boder will be here. And, of course, Bill Samaras will join us on Wednesday to recap the Lowell City Council meeting. Till then, everybody, today I'm going to advise you to stay warm, stay dry, and we'll catch you on the other side.